on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
Hello and welcome to a very bustling and busy paddock here in Monza. It is very hot and beautifully sunny as we get ready for the final practice session ahead of qualifying this afternoon. This is the last chance for the teams to finesse their setups. And I have to say, there are a few drivers after yesterday's two practice sessions who really need the next 60 minutes. I'm thinking of Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. He had a fuel system problem in FP2, having missed FP1 to allow rookie Felipe Drugovich a go. And even Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes wasn't happy with the direction the team took between the two practice sessions yesterday. Max Verstappen led the way in FP1, and then it was birthday boy Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari who topped the timesheets in FP2. But, of course, there are no presents, prizes or points handed out for practice, so it's all going to come down to later on this afternoon to see whether Ferrari can topple the Red Bull dominance and, of course, the dominance of Max Verstappen, who has a huge lead in the drivers' standings as we come into the Italian Grand Prix weekend. 138 points is the margin between himself and his teammate Sergio Perez, who also had a difficult end to his FP2 session yesterday. He was doing well in terms of times and pace, but then he put his car into the gravel in the last few minutes of the second practice session. Now, we've got plenty to look forward to in the next 60 minutes. I'm Rosanna Tennant down here in the paddock and pit lane, and in the commentary box joining me to talk us through the upcoming hour is our lead commentator Harry Benjamin and former Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer. Harry, as I drove into the circuit this morning, I saw a sign saying everyone's a Ferrari fan. Well, that might not be true if you're listening to me and thinking, oh, I go for somebody else. But can the Tifosi, the Ferrari fans, get excited about the prospect of a pole position later on this afternoon, do you think?
Well, I think that same question was put to Carlos Sainz, and he said, well, it's free to dream, isn't it? So on that basis, absolutely. I mean, they have been quick, both Ferraris, and as you say, Sainz topping FP2, they don't know actually why they're actually showing some decent pace, and we don't really know that either. I mean, they look quite good on high fuel run, struggling a little bit on the lower fuel runs. So that's what Leclerc was saying anyway, at least after yesterday's running. So yeah, why not? Something to smile about, at least with Sainz topping it. That birthday pressure really paying off.
I love how you called it birthday pressure yesterday, and Jolyon Palmer calling you out on that, saying it was something magical to drive a Ferrari around Monza on your birthday as a Ferrari driver. And Jolyon, I've got to ask you, this is a low downforce circuit. Some drivers yesterday saying that's really difficult. Alex Albon even in the Williams, who we all expect to go well here given that slippery car. But what is it about a low downforce setup that makes a car difficult to drive?
Well, it's just inherently you have less grip, basically. The downforce is the crucial part of a Formula One car. It's what makes these cars the fastest in the world. When you have high speed, you have aerodynamics working in your favour, and it keeps you glued to the road in kind of the opposite way to an aeroplane, who have a lot of lift when you're going at high speed and they take off. The more that you're being sucked down into the ground, the more speed you can take through the corners. At Monza, you don't want to be just having huge downforce on, because you also need the straight line speed, and that is the balance for this circuit. So they're losing a little bit of that precious downforce, but it helps them go quick on the straights, which they need to, because the straights are so crucial here. So it changes the dynamic a little bit, feels a little bit different to drive. The brakes feel, I would describe it as more floaty, but to a non-driver that probably doesn't mean too much. But you basically, instead of stamping on the brake pedal and feeling the inertia, just sort of 5G of pressure, you're not feeling that. It just all feels a little bit more vague from the cockpit when you don't have the car working as beautifully as they are ultimately designed to for most of the time. But of course, for this track, you take that to be quick on the straights.
I love that description, Jolyon. Floaty. I'm going to hang on to that one. We heard drivers making changes between the practice sessions. That's a normal thing to do, but it was Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, as I mentioned earlier on, who wasn't happy with the direction that the team went in. Sort of different setups between the two drivers, and it was costing Lewis about 5 kilometres, I think, compared to George Russell. So this practice session really crucial for Lewis to feel confident going into qualifying, isn't it, Harry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're a bit nervous heading into qualifying, both Mercedes drivers actually, and it is qualifying day, of course, coming up later this afternoon, 3 o'clock on the sports website and app. But I think one of the main things is actually just getting, obviously, more data collected this weekend, but also making sure you find the right position on track. Are you going to bother trying to practice getting a toe in this session to carry that forward into qualifying? As we said, straight line speed so crucial here. Still a lot of unknowns to be answered in this FP3 session.
And of course, it was Checo Perez talking about the toe first yesterday in the practice sessions. And I wonder if Red Bull are going to try and do something with the toe later this afternoon for qualifying to set their drivers up for the best possible outcome. I mentioned Perez was in the gravel at the end of FP2. He says the car's feeling good. But of course, he's got a teammate in Max Verstappen who seems to be unstoppable. Looking for his 10th consecutive win this weekend. He's already won 11 of the 13 Grand Prix this season. I'm sure he's got the confidence that the team can sort whatever issues he was having out yesterday and have a fantastic Saturday and put himself in the best possible position in qualifying and then for the race tomorrow. Guys, FP3 is underway. I can hear the cars roaring around the track. Over to you in the commentary box to talk us through it.
Thank you very much, Rosanna. Yes, green light well and truly on at the end of the pit lane. Cars out on track. Bottas, Stroll, Hülkenberg all making their way out here at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. 5.793 kilometres long, 3.6 miles, 11 turns, 7 to the right, 3 to the left. It is fast, known as the Temple of Speed, and it's one that normally kicks up some good racing, and certainly, Jolien, qualifying is always a fun one to watch.
Yeah, you've been practicing your Italian overnight.
You know, it was pretty good, wasn't it? Pretty good.
Work's to be done. And there has been work done for everyone overnight, just to try and fine-tune the balance of the cars, as well as pronounce Autodromo.
You can never let me have something, can
Monza.
You can never have it all.
Hey, it was solid. It was solid. My Italian's not much better. Italian fever.
If a solid from Parma is an A star in my book. For those who wish to do a sync up for FP3, it's 57 minutes and 52, 51 and 50 seconds remaining of this free practice 3 session. In terms of how the standings look, as Rosanna mentioned, it is Max Verstappen with a rather large gap at the top, 138 points clear with his 11 wins, 9 of them consecutive in this 2023 season. His teammate Sergio Perez is behind him with 201 points to his name. Then comes Alonso, Hamilton. Just now there's 12 points between those two drivers over third and fourth. Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Norris, Stroll, Gasly rounding out the top 10. And over in the constructors, it's Red Bull with a 285 point advantage at the top over Mercedes. Then comes Aston Martin, Ferrari in fourth, McLaren fifth, Alpine, Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo and Alfa Tauri rounding out the 10 teams that make up the constructors.
Autodromo
Nazionale di Monza.
Andrew Benson has had his say. We're both corrected, but we're fine tuning. Much like everyone in Formula One, you gotta keep on top of things, and we're getting there. Out at the garage goes Carlos Sainz to join the fray. Fastest man yesterday. I love this quote. It's free to dream.
Yeah, he's bang on, isn't it? Maybe there's a business there to be had. But Carlos Sainz then climbs.
It's free. You can make a business out of
but
things.
Maybe you can start to
monetize dreaming.
Monetize dreaming.
No,
in this day and age, you've got to think of every angle possible, haven't you? As Sainz peels out of the pit lane, so does Charles Leclerc in a slightly tweaked livery for the Ferrari drivers. They've added some yellow stripes across the nose cone and the engine cover, new helmets and overalls as well to celebrate the Ferrari hypercar team winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans earlier this year with a team of drivers, and one of those being a former F1 driver, Antonio Giovinazzi, the Italian, who is also here on the pit wall acting as Ferrari reserve this weekend, as Leclerc gives a little wave to the fans as he climbs through Curva Grande. Rosanna Tennant in the pits.
Thank you very much, Harry. Yes, I've just watched Lando Norris come back into the McLaren pit box. And of course, yesterday, a lot of the teams were looking at these circuit-specific upgrades that they've brought to the Temple of Speed, the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. There's no D Monza. There you go. Just pulling you guys up. And that's how I order a pizza.
And we're getting ever better on the broadcast.
My quality will be perfect.
So actually what we realise is Harry started with such a low benchmark that we've managed to make about 5 incremental changes.
I am sure there's a D?
I promise you there's no D. It's Autodromo Nazionale Monza, which I have to say, you would think there'd be a D because you think of Monza, but actually there isn't. So, sorry about that.
So my grammar is actually correct, but it's just Monza being wrong.
You're very proper, Harry. So Lando Norris has just come in, and yesterday we saw him with aero race around the front of the car, obviously trying to work out how the air is flowing over the McLaren. Today, no extra bits of kit on the car, just Flovis on the left-hand side of the rear wing. So McLaren's still needing to get more information about how to run the car on this incredible track. And just a word on Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Sat out FP1 yesterday, so Felipe Drugovich could have a drive, and then didn't even manage to get a time on the board. He had to pull off the track with a fuel system issue. Team have told me it's been resolved, but he's on that hard tyre, so I assume he's going to be doing something a little different in this session, a different run plan to get a bit more learning, especially as he missed out so much yesterday.
Yeah, he definitely needs to make up for that lost track time, doesn't he? Speaking of tyres, worth reminding you that this weekend is the second running of the alternative tyre allocation, which we first trialled out back in Hungary, in Budapest. So this is reducing the number of tyres brought to a weekend by Pirelli. So instead of the usual 13 sets everybody gets, it's now just 11 per team, and that is made up of 3 hard compound, 4 medium and 4 soft, and that also carries through into qualifying. So you have to use in Q1 the hard compound of tyre, in Q2 you have to use the medium, and in Q3 you have to use the soft, and that was met with a little bit of mixed reaction from the drivers once again coming into this weekend with I think we were all a little bit worried that we'd have a bit of lack of track action in FP1 and FP2. Certainly that wasn't the case. There was never really a lull on track for too long, and that seems to have carried forward as well today in FP3 with pretty much everybody out there with the exception of Alex Albon in the Williams and Oscar Piastri in the McLaren on a mixture of soft, medium and hard compounded tyres.
Verstappen just coming through the final corner now, ready to launch into his first flying lap of the day. Norris tops the times for Perez, Sainz and Hamilton, all on the softs, separated by less than half a second, but the top 3, which were the top 3 teams yesterday as well, it was Ferrari, then McLaren, then Red Bull, still separated by just 1/10 of a second, very, very closely matched. And Mercedes 3/10 down. Hamilton comes back into the pits after just his first fly, so maybe a little tweak to a front wing or something going on for Lewis, whose first lap today is right there with George Russell, in fact just 200ths quicker. But let's keep an eye on Max Verstappen, who's done a decent first sector up on Norris, but it's not the fastest of all.
No, makes his way through turns 4 and 5, the De La Rosa chicane, before approaching the first of the Lesmos. And actually it was his teammate, wasn't it, Sergio Perez, who actually said he had one of his better Fridays in recent history, but he ended it in the wall, or at least with a skirmish with the wall, after going through the gravel and losing the rear end of his Red Bull as he came through the final corner, the Parabolica or the Curve Alboreto, as Max Verstappen now makes his way through Ascari and goes purple in the middle sector, fastest of anybody, and now comes along the back straight, approaching the final corner. Verstappen then, this will be his first lap time on the board on that soft compound of tyre, past the seam where his teammate ended in the gravel, and yesterday makes it through, foot to the floor and over the line for Verstappen on his first attempt, goes fastest, over 6.5 tenths clear, a 1:21.838 for the Dutchman.
Oh.
Hello.
Over 6 tenths clear then for Verstappen. It looked so close yesterday, first lap out, and he's put a bit of a gap to the rest of the field. Perez was the quicker Red Bull in FP2, and that's why he was quite happy. He was also good on the long runs, and they were running slightly different wing configurations as well, so they've converged overnight, and Verstappen on his first lap looks pretty happy with the direction that he's gone in. Perez is improving this time, has done the fastest first sector of anyone, has improved in the middle sector, and we'll see what he can do over the line. The track will probably be cleaning up a little bit, and there'll be some of Verstappen's 6/10 margin maybe in the fact that he went a couple of laps later, so the other drivers might have taken a little bit of the sheen off the surface. Let's stick to that one for now. But Perez improves, still 3/10 down on his teammate.
One thing we see a lot here, and we saw it a little bit yesterday, I think, with the 2 Red Bulls, is this practicing to get a toe as the McLaren garage assemble to put the front left wheel on to Oscar Piastri's McLaren to get him out. Still not out there, along with Alex Albon, yet to emerge from the pits. The practicing of a toe Can you explain, Jolyon, why they do that here in Monza and what that achieves, but also how tricky it is to pull off?
So a tow, a slipstream, it's again all about going quicker on the straights, and you're following the car ahead. He's punching the hole in the air, so you've got less air resistance effectively, and that's what a tow slipstream is. And the ideal might be a sort of 6 seconds behind a car, so you're not directly in behind them, because then you'll get dirty air through the corners, and that's the balance that everyone's got to work out, the perfect distance to be behind that car ahead. And it's difficult to pull off. Well, it's sort of some and some, really. It's difficult to pull off if you're all looking for the same thing. So in qualifying later, someone's probably going to be the first car, and they're going to be leading everyone else round as Hamilton cuts through the first chicane and rejoins safely, but just a little bit late on the brakes there for Hamilton, trying just a second flying lap of the day. And I think we're going to see a lot of it later on. We saw a little bit yesterday. I haven't seen too much on these early laps. I don't think Verstappen was really following anyone particularly closely on his session topping time for the moment, and both Red Bulls are now back in the pits as well. But it will be, it's Monza. We're always talking about slipstreaming and towing, and in these cars, they're big. As Formula One cars go, they're pretty chunky, and that's why sitting in behind another one gives you good benefit on the straight.
Well, Hamilton was all on his own when he went off and cut the chicane down at turn 1. He's currently 7th, just in front of his teammate George Russell, Rosanna.
Yeah, yesterday during FP2, Lewis Hamilton wasn't happy with the direction that he and the team had taken with his rear wing setup, and we hear that perhaps it was 5 kilometre difference between himself and George, and that was what was troubling the 7-time world champion. His trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin was saying that yesterday was a messy day and that they've just got to get on with the job of sorting the car out. Well, the first step in that was reverting Lewis back to the wing that he ran in FP1, which was obviously better for him and better for this track. So that's the wing he's running in this session, and let's hope, for Lewis's sake, he's gone back in the right direction so that he can move forward, not just in FP3 but also come qualifying crucially later on.
Yeah, well, he had to bail out that last lap, but he's coming through the final corner now, so we'll get another go at it. So we'll see what Lewis has got with this tweaked Mercedes Ford this morning. Leclerc's just come through in his Ferrari through Ascari, a little bit slow in the first sector, personal best in the middle sector. Leclerc is currently 9th fastest speed on that soft compound of tyre, and makes his way round the right hand of the Parabolica, the gravel to your left. So easy to drag the car out wide there, but he keeps it planted across the line for Leclerc, gets himself up into 5th with a 1:22.7, still over 8.5 tenths off of Max Verstappen, who is currently fastest, 3.5 tenths clear of Perez. Norris, Sainz, Leclerc the top 5, Gasly, Alonso, Hamilton, Russell, Magnussen the top 10, Ocon, Sargent, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Lawson, Bottas, Zhou, the 18 drivers who have all set a time. Still no time for Albon or Piastri, who's still in the pits.
So Red Bull's 1-2, and I wonder if they've either unshackled themselves in the first flying lap of this session, or even the second one for Perez, who improved on a second flyer, or they've actually just turned the wick up a little bit earlier than some others, because the gap to the rest of the field is still ginormous. Verstappen to Perez is 3 tenths. Perez to third place Norris is another 3 tenths, so Norris is 6 tenths off Verstappen. And Sainz, quickest man yesterday, 8 tenths away, as is Leclerc. So I think there's something more in there for Ferrari. I don't believe Red Bull could have been holding themselves back this much yesterday on a circuit that on one lap might be a little bit closer. Hamilton gets closer to the Red Bulls as he crosses the line then. That was the sign you could hear there. 4 tenths away from Verstappen, within 1 tenth of Perez now.
As Alex Albon in the Williams finally emerges and gets his first lap on the board and puts it up into 8th spot on the soft compound of tyres. So a good opening gambit from the Williams driver. We're just seeing a little replay on board with Yuki Tsunoda in his Alpha Tauri, making his way through Curva Grande.
What the is Sainz doing, honestly?
We've heard Yuki a lot this weekend complaining about other drivers and traffic.
Another day, another one for Yuki. Sainz ambling a little bit through Curva Grande and was in the middle of the road, and that part of the circuit, it is quite narrow, and you're flying through upwards of 180 miles per hour through there. And it's just disconcerting, I would say the word, for Tsunoda, when you don't know if the driver knows that you're there. Is he going to come all the way across? So you just had to blend out of it on the straight, and as it happened, he did have the space to get through. But another one for Tsunoda, who seems to be getting blocked by more people than everyone else so far through this 2 and a bit practice sessions. Sainz crosses the line and up to 4th.
Yeah, tidy lap also for Carlos Sainz, who just slots in behind Hamilton and ahead of Norris, who now comes across the line. DRS flap open on the rear wing as he heads to the braking zone of turn 1 to set another flyer.
Well, Verstappen's just improved. He's just improved. He's half a second clear of Perez now.
And Perez had a good day yesterday by all stretch of the imagination. Well, not all stretch of the imagination, by all... It crashed to the end, okay, fine. But considering that, he had a good day, right?
He was quick. He was quick, and he didn't destroy the car with the crash. He could have done, but he just about got away with it. So that is a good day for Sergio Perez. To be quicker than Verstappen is as good as you can hope for. Whatever has happened now, they've converged on setup, and suddenly Max half a second clear of Perez, but also the gap that he's got to the rest of the field is huge.
Do you agree with Hamilton? Because he said this weekend that he believes he has had teammates who can bring it to him more than Perez has had than Verstappen has had over the years. So what Hamilton's had: Alonso, Button, Rosberg, Bottas, Verstappen. I mean, if you go right back to Toro Rosso days, Sainz, Ricciardo, Gasly, Albon, and now Perez. Has he got a point?
I think it's probably factually correct, isn't he? I would say through his career, a few teammates with Fernando Alonso, that's pretty tough. Jenson Button, former champion. Nico Rosberg, a champion because he beat Hamilton. And definitely a really solid peddler as well was Nico Rosberg. And Verstappen's, Daniel Ricciardo, his toughest, or Carlos Sainz. That level, he's definitely not been up against a champion yet in the other car. And more recently, it's been kind of your upper midfielder, really. Your Gasly, Albon, who we maybe will see flourish again in a top team, given the way that he's going at the moment. And then Perez, who has proven himself to be a really solid upper midfielder through his career. And that looks like where he's at. Now he's in a top car and, okay, winning races, but not able to take it to the likes of another champion in the same team. So I think that's fair, but also Hamilton's most dominant period was up against Valtteri Bottas, who is the similar caliber to a Sergio Perez as well. So I think Lewis is not wrong with saying that he's had tougher teammates, but he's also had the Verstappen role as well. When number one at Mercedes, your teammate's a solid midfielder, which is what Bottas is now again in the Alfa Romeo, and he had this level of dominance over his teammate as well that Max has got.
Yeah, well, Verstappen and Perez and Hamilton, the top 3 currently in this FP3 session, all in the pits along with Sainz, so the top 4. This is the sound of the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, who has finally emerged out of the pit lane after a bit of a slow start, and he's braking for the final corner. The right-hander, he's got a little bit of traffic in front of him. Personal best sector 1 and 2 is actually his teammate in front of him, perhaps trialling a little bit of the toe that Jolyon mentioned earlier, as Lando Norris now gets on his way with the DRS open in front of him. Piastri crosses the line to go 11th fastest, just 1.4 seconds off of Verstappen on that soft compound of tyre. Alonso up in 6th in the Aston Martin on the hard compound of tyre, just about a second off of Verstappen. And Alonso saying the real challenges he thinks this weekend are going to come from actually Ferrari, most likely Red Bull as well, because we were asking the question, why are Ferrari doing quite well? This is kind of a similar track maybe to like a Canada or something, where they have long straights but not quick chicanes, so you're not spending too much time in the corners, and that benefits Ferrari.
Yeah, that's where they're stronger. The long, fast corners is where they're weaker, and that's what we saw a lot last time in Zandvoort. Circuits like Silverstone didn't suit Ferrari particularly well either, and ironically, both suited Williams down to the ground this year. So Williams didn't really expect to be quick on those ones, but were. it'll be interesting to see how they're quick on how they go on a circuit they think they're going to be really quick on, in theory, which is this one with their decent low drag car. Interesting on tyres at the moment, because it's not as straightforward as it might seem, and this might explain the gap out front. Verstappen is out there on a used tyre, as most of the drivers are, but Sainz and Leclerc, the two Ferraris, are on a more used soft tyre, so they're carrying over tyres from yesterday. And I think that might explain the disparity to an extent. It's still a big gap, Verstappen to the rest,
effect, isn't it?
Well, it's half a second to the rest, but that might explain why Ferrari was so quick yesterday, and now they're running 4th and 8th. I wouldn't have expected them to fall away like this, and I think they seem to be on the oldest tyres of everyone out there right now.
And do you think? And is that a direct response to the fact we're running this alternative tyre allocation this weekend, where they have got to use these tyres, certain tyres, for each Q1, Q2 and Q3 segment in qualifying later this afternoon?
Well, everyone's got to be a little bit frugal with their tyre use. That's the thing. You cannot just go out every run and have the luxury of having a new set of tyres, because there's fewer tyres in your allocation. Full stop, for the same amount of track time in theory. So everyone's having to pick and choose a little bit when they go for the new tyre, and the first run of FP3, maybe not the time to burn up a set of softs. And as the track's going to rubber in, it will get better, it will clean up, even from where we were at yesterday. We've had a nice day's running, not had the rain that we've had for so many races, but it still takes sometimes a few laps just to clean up the circuit a little bit, and they'll wait and put on a new set of boots for the last run, maybe another run in there as well if they're very fortunate with it. But that's why I think we haven't got the clearest of pictures right now.
When you were here racing, or particularly in quali, I want to go back to that, trying to manage the space on track, trying to get the best of a tow, whether that's from your teammate or just luck of the draw, somebody else being in front of you. What was it like for you when you were here? What was your game plan going into qualifying?
You want to be just in sync with everyone else. It's actually a lot simpler than you think to go for it in qualifying. In practice, it's ironically a little bit harder, because everyone's doing their own thing. Right now, there are 5 drivers on out laps, randomly spread out through the field. Other drivers are on fast laps, some are on slow laps. And it's very difficult to get in sync with people. So you don't want to start a flying lap and then have someone a few cars going very slowly in front. You're not going to gain anything really from the slipstream. And you've got the possibility of having traffic in some of the corners, like the Lesmos, as Sergio Perez approaches in the Red Bull on another lap. So it's about having that balance. But in qualifying, it's easier, because when you leave the pits, everyone's on a similar run plan. You all leave the pits together. It doesn't matter if the car ahead of you, I was in a Renault, the car ahead of you could be a Ferrari, could be anything. They're all going to be looking for a fast lap, the same lap as you, and they're all going to be within a second of performance. So you sit there 5 or 6 seconds back. Doesn't matter who it is. You're all aligned on your thoughts. So it should be more straightforward. It's just the one that's the first car out, they're the one that's got to take the pain. And that's where we saw the Mickey Mouse ridiculous Q3 a few years ago, where no one wanted to be that first car.
That's, Rosanna, the picture that stands out for me in 2019, where they're all trying to jostle for position for one final lap in Q3, and half the train of cars don't even make it across the line.
Yeah, exactly. It starts to look more like a parking lot in Monza than a racetrack. Do you know what I've been interested in reading from the teams and hearing from the teams about how already in practice they're preempting, as we listen to radio.
That's the guy dreaming again. Understood, Nico.
It's free to dream.
I know, so many dreams going on here in Monza. I love that. I love how the team's almost preempting where they think they're going to shake out in quali. So Williams, for example, really focusing on that medium tyre, because that's the tyre they need to perform well on later this afternoon if they're going to progress through to Q3. So this alternative tyre allocation, I think it's really interesting the way it affects the whole weekend, and especially teams as they start to rate their chances of progressing through qualifying.
Yeah, well, speaking of traffic, we just saw a replay while you were chatting there, Rosanna, of Lewis Hamilton coming a crop of, I think it was a Williams in front of him, Sargent dawdling on the racing line coming into the Parabolica. Lewis raising a hand up in his cockpit, not too happy with that one. Well, to try and combat the sort of mess or preempt the mess of qualifying to try and stop it, Niels Wittich has updated his event notes coming into today and saying essentially that any driver that exceeds 1 minute and 41 seconds on any lap during or after the end of qualifying, including in and out laps, may be deemed to be going unnecessarily slowly. So essentially they don't want people dawdling.
Yeah, and what that prevents is the drivers just going so slowly to the point that they don't want to be the first car, so they just slow, but no one overtakes them. So now you cannot do that. You have to drive at a certain speed. So if you're the first car, tough stuff, get on with it. That's the idea from race control, and that's also been the case for a couple of years around this circuit since 2019 and the debacle that was. The Ferrari of Charles Leclerc has just come through, said another time. Most of the field are on sort of a medium to high fuel load right now, and after those early laps on lower fuel, just racking up a little bit more. And the sound you can hear is Max Verstappen, top of the times, coming out of the Curva di Alboreto, and over he goes the line. He's 4.5 seconds adrift of the outright pace. So that's where we're at this stage in proceedings. The Ferraris that came through looked like Leclerc's head was banging all over the place coming out of Ascari. He moved to the left-hand side, and I don't know if that was a bit of porpoising or just pure bouncing on a very harsh surface there, but quite violent for Leclerc.
Yeah, and a lot of work as well going on to the floor on the side edge of Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin in the garage. Fernando Alonso currently 7th fastest, went out on the hard tyre and about a second off of Verstappen's initial pace on the soft compound. With 33 minutes and 40 seconds remaining of this FP3 session, it is Verstappen fastest from Perez, Hamilton, Sainz, Norris, the top 5, Piastri, Alonso, Russell, Leclerc. That's the sound you can hear right now, just a replay of Charles Leclerc bouncing down. Actually, his helmet is really going up and down in the cockpit towards the Curva di Alboreto down the back straight. And this came up yesterday, Jolien. Is this the helmet lifting that Verstappen was referring to yesterday?
It's porpoising. That car is porpoising on the
don't say that
straight.
Word. I thought we were done.
My eyes. I don't think they deceived me there. You could see the bottom of the car just getting into that up and down motion. I don't think it was just bumps. I think they're obviously reducing the ride height, getting it low, but there was just a little bit of porpoising on the Ferrari again.
A bumpy ride for Leclerc, then he's 9th in front of Gasly, rounds out the top 10. Albon, Ocon, Magnussen, Sargent and Stroll, the top 15. Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Lawson, Bottas and Zhou, the Alfa Romeos, 19th and 20th, but hoping to get a bit more running today after their difficult start in yesterday's FP1 session. Hashtag BBC F1, a few queries and comments coming in. This from Dr. F. As he's best placed to do so, can we get Jolien's assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of the Haas drivers? Now, obviously you're best placed to do this. Haas drivers Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg, off the back of being reconfirmed for another year coming into this weekend, last weekend even at Haas. You've been teammates with both of them. And I think with the reconfirmation of this Magnussen, certainly with Haas, it's one of the longest pairings in Formula One, as is the sound of Kevin Magnussen, on cue almost. But both reconfirmed, but Haas are struggling at the moment.
Yeah, and that's not down to the drivers. I think the drivers are both very, very solid, and they have strengths and weaknesses in different areas. Dr. F will be interested to know. The car, it always lacks development. Magnussen actually flies up to 3rd place with that lap. That's a new set of soft tyres for K-Mag. So that's the damage that they can do, even for a Haas then, to get up to 3rd. But the car, they're just lost this year, aren't they, with development. And crucially, it's not one lap pace, but it's the race running that they're so struggling on. And I think there's such a big difference in the two drivers. Hulkenberg is rapid over one lap, and sadly I found that out for myself in 2017, and he's so quick. He's got a natural feel for it. He's very good, I think, in the high downforce cars that we've got now. I think this generation of cars suits him very well. He's so smooth behind the wheel, and it's very minimal steering inputs, keeps the aero platform good, keeps the car working in its nicest way. He's not amazing on the brakes, but he's just able to carry good minimum speed through medium speed corners. You look at the data afterwards, you think, I don't see why I can't do that, but you get back in the car and you can't do that. It's very good skill from Hulkenberg, and I think that's what K-Mag is finding out a little bit right now. Whereas Magnussen is quite a different style of driver, which was kind of more my style as well, where very aggressive on the brake. So he's braking really hard, hitting big peak pressure. He's able to get the car stopped very well. He's good in the fast corners, and that was always we'd be battling of who could be the quickest through the fast corners, and K-Mag was absolutely on it the whole time. Whereas Hulkenberg actually might be losing a little bit in the fast corners sometimes, might not be so strong. He wouldn't be braking sometimes as late as me when we were teammates, but it wouldn't matter because he'd make up the time in the mid part or the exit of the corners. So they have very different driving styles, and overall Hulkenberg clearly is the faster this year. He's done a great job over one lap, but on a race pace, it's actually fairly even between the two. In fact, sometimes Magnussen has the stronger race performances, and that's always been a slight weakness of Nico as well. When it's a low degradation circuit, he can be really strong, and that was Melbourne, start of this year. He did a great job, banked Haas's big haul of points, which was 7th place, and that, I mean, they can be so thankful for that because they barely scored since. Only in a pit stop sprint race in Austria was his other chance, and again, degradation, I mean, he had it, but when you're pitting on a sprint, it's pretty negated. So Magnussen may be slightly stronger in the long run. I think as a pairing, they're pretty decent for Haas. I think the problem is the car right now.
And they don't want to take the risk of rookies again, do they? Because I feel like they've been there, done that, paid the price for it.
Well, I wondered if Magnussen might be under a little bit of pressure because headline times have all been done by Hulkenberg. His qualifying performance has been sensational, and the gap between the two drivers is actually pretty big. It's towards 4/10 on average, so that's pretty sizable for one lap pace. And the race pace often, they're mired so far down that it's difficult to tell too much from the outside because they're never looking at getting points anymore right now. But you also wonder, who's the stronger option right now? We don't have a litany of strong options out there. Certainly very few that have got Formula One experience, which Haas absolutely prefer, and they've been fairly unwavering from that, apart from the year with Schumacher and Mazepin. And even with Schumacher last year, they didn't want him. They wanted the experience of Hulkenberg back, and I'd say it's paid off. So I think they're a logical option to continue for a team that's towards the back of the grid. They're a nice lineup.
Yeah, well, good for Steiner, clearly happy with that. But Haas are currently 8th in the constructors with 11 points. Williams with Albon have leapfrogged them by only 4 points at the moment. Williams ahead in 7th, but on a qualifying head-to-head, it's Hulkenberg 10-3 in his favour, and race head-to-head, Hulkenberg only just ahead, 7-6, so much closer in race pace.
Yeah, the qualifying pace is the really big difference, and the race pace is closer, but I fear a little bit for them. They're 8th at the moment. Williams with Albon's points in Zandvoort take themselves clear by 4 points, but I think they're looking over their shoulders now. 8th at the moment. Alfa Romeo just 2 points down. Even AlphaTauri 8 points down. It'd be a big ask for them to get something, but 1 or 2 good races. Tsunoda, when they get Ricciardo back in the car, that will help their chances as well. I just don't see Haas really scoring apart from a lucky break right now, or a chaotic race in rain and dry. That was Zandvoort. They still didn't get there.
A pole in Brazil for Magnussen again. But it's classic Haas, though, isn't it? They tend to start the season off quite well, but then the rate of development is never there, or certainly hasn't been there in the last 3 to 4 years for them. And then it is kind of always a case of, we'll try and see what we can bank in the early part of the season and then just cling on for dear life.
Yeah, it must be a bit frustrating to be driving for them at that point. I mean, the amount of times they've flown out the blocks for the midfield, in the midfield context, is pretty much every year they look like they're going to surprise, but they've got a very small team. They take a lot of parts from Ferrari, and yeah, their development rate is just it should be dwarfed by everyone else as well. They've got a title sponsor for this year. They've got more investment in. The hope was that they could progress through, but it just doesn't look like it's happened. And there's always been the mystery for them is tyres and degradation, and it just is still there. Even with their experienced drivers, they don't seem to be able to get a decent handle on it just yet.
Well, currently Kevin Magnussen is third fastest. Nico Hulkenberg is currently last, but has just come out on the soft compound of tyre, I believe. He's on an out lap anyway. We're waiting to see once the timing screen updates. Albon, though, has just set a blistering lap to go second fastest on a set of mediums, 4.5 tenths shy of Max Verstappen, who is currently fastest, Rosanna, still with 25 minutes remaining.
Absolutely, and I would imagine Alex Albon is running fairly light on that medium. Going back to what I was saying in terms of qualifying later on, Williams focusing on progressing through to Q3, and I love saying that because so often we say, oh, the Williams are doing well in practice, and then it just falls away. But how great is that they are punching up and thinking, yeah, we are targeting Q3. I think that is fantastic. You mentioned Daniel Ricciardo coming back to AlphaTauri, and of course that helping the team's cause and potentially setting to score some points later on in the season. But just a word on Liam Lawson. I don't know about you, Julian, but obviously I'm speaking as a layperson, but to come in to Formula One on a very, very tricky, treacherous, wet track in Zandvoort, then to follow that up with an alternative tyre allocation weekend here in Monza, and then if he's still in the car for Singapore, which is a hugely physical track and an altogether different proposition for him, what a 3 races to be given. I mean, if that doesn't test you in more ways than one, I don't know what will. But in a way, do you think the team will take that into consideration, that these 3 races will have been quite tricky ones to jump in for?
I don't know if this one is that tricky. I know the tyre allocation's different, but I think this is his big opportunity. The track is fairly straightforward. He'll know it well from his junior formula. And I think this is his big opportunity, because you're right, Zandvoort, I mean, he only came in for Saturday and it was just chaotic, wasn't it? That's the only way to describe the Zandvoort weekend, with the weather on an already difficult circuit. Singapore, I imagine he'll be fairly apprehensive heading to Singapore with limited experience. A really tough street circuit. He won't have driven there, and it's so physical, as you said as well. One of the toughest Grand Prix on the calendar, probably the toughest physically. So that's going to be a test for him. So this, I think, is his chance. And he's done an okay job in this session. A couple of tenths away from Tsunoda on their first runs, 15th to 16th, the AlphaTauris. He's got to try and De Vries it this weekend, which is not the De Vries from the first half of this year. It's the De Vries from this time last year. He's got to do the Williams De Vries, which is to actually just stun a little bit and get towards the fringes of the top 10. And this is a big chance. I think if he does that, then I think Helmut Marko and the Red Bull hierarchy would look fairly favourably, because of course Singapore will be a little bit tough. But if he's not quite there this weekend, then I don't think it will be terrible for him either, but I don't think it'll be good enough to stake a claim for a regular drive next year.
Well, here's Alonso first.
The car's going to slow.
Yeah, everyone is slow. They will have a bad surprise on qualifying.
Yeah, copy, mate, yeah.
They will have a bad surprise in qualifying. That's Alonso then on the radio there as he makes his way up through the gears and down towards Ascari. Rosanna.
Yeah, I'm so interested, Jolien, that you say that the alternative tyre allocation doesn't sort of stretch the drivers, because I would have thought trying to wring the neck of a Formula One car on hard tyres in a busy Q1 session around this track, where we're obviously talking about the traffic around the Parabolica, I would have thought that'd be quite difficult. But how difficult is it to get those hard tyres working on a car in quali trim?
Well, it's going to be a challenge to get them fired up. Here's Norris.
Why are people so stupid? Why can't they look in the mirrors?
He's just done the most unorthodox overtake around the outside on the exit curb of Lesmo 1 on a driver, and I couldn't see which one it was. I was busy looking at how he was managing to stay on the curb and not the gravel going around the outside of that slower driver. No, I think it is. I don't think it's. Piastri's off through the gravel in the second chicane, so he'll pick it up as well. One McLaren almost finding the gravel at Lesmo 1. The next one has just slithered off, but Piastri's back on the road, and he's about to get in the way of Norris. Is he coming through Lesmo 1 again? That's not going to go down too well.
Just about scoots around the outside as Lando Norris. Piastri, you can see him looking in his mirrors because the Williams of Albon was coming straight through as well. I wonder if Albon was the car in front of Norris as well when he went round the outside at the exit curve of Lesmo 1.
Norris, I don't think, was on a particularly fast lap there, so Piastri won't be two in the firing line. This is a replay of what happened for Oscar that you can hear. A little oversteer through the first apex. Wide he goes, skidding through the gravel and back on. Right, answer your question, Rosanna. The hard tyres, they will fire up just about okay on this circuit, but they might be more forgiving because you can probably, if you're a rookie, you can probably do a few laps on them, or at least a couple of laps to try and find a little bit of temperature, to try and find a groove. And I don't think it'll be the be-all and end-all for someone that doesn't have huge experience.
Oscar, let's drive through the pit lane to check the car. We'll box this lap, drive through the pit lane and check the car. We'll stop on the mark and check the car. Yeah, copy.
Well, as Piastri comes into the pit box, Rosanna, what can you see?
Well, I'm watching the mechanics getting down onto their hands and knees and peering underneath the McLaren, having a good look around the floor because, of course, as you heard, he clattered over the gravel and all that gravel could get thrown up and lodge itself in the underpart of the car. So the mechanics have had a little look. He's still got the revs going and here he goes, leaving the pits now on the medium tyre, and it doesn't look like there was anything too badly damaged there, just a little bit of gravel that I'm sure the mechanics will have swept out, and he's on his way again.
Precautionary from McLaren with 19 minutes left on the clock, and you can understand that. Race conditions, they'll just carry on, of course, but whilst they have the time, Oscar comes through and carries on. Daniel Ricciardo made his return with these tyre rules as well in Budapest, and he was really impressive in the same car.
He certainly was. But now, as we've said, we don't really get to see what Ricciardo has got now, with him breaking the metacarpal in his left hand. He's gone to see Dr. Mir, who was the same doctor who oversaw Lance Stroll's return to the cockpit at the start of the year after his winter training incident, breaking his wrists, and Stroll got it in the car and performed rather remarkably well back in Bahrain. Got 6th place in the end in that race. So let's see what Ricciardo can do when he returns. 80 minutes and 25 seconds remain of this free practice 3 session. The final practice session, Verstappen is fastest in front of Albon, Perez, Magnussen, Hamilton, the top 5, Sainz, Norris, Piastri, Alonso, Russell, the top 10, Leclerc, Hülkenberg, Sargent, Gasly, Ocon, the top 15, Tsunoda, Lawson, Zhou, Bottas and Stroll 20th and last, as it currently stands, with quite a few of the drivers in the pit lane, with only the 2 McLarens and Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas out on track as it currently stands. Down at Ferrari, a lot of watching and waiting. The Tifosi fans desperate to see these cars on track. They're actually running a bit of a different livery, along with a few, Alfa Romeo as well, running a tweaked livery as well, the Italian flag on the body of that car. One-off liveries, Jolien? A fan?
Well, it's subtle. I don't mind a one-off livery. Yeah, I don't mind them.
Well, you had a couple. You had one-off livery. Was it the Star Wars livery? Monaco? Was that you, or was that just the overalls?
I think that was just the overalls. I think don't think we changed the livery from the Renault yellow. I don't mind it. There was the white Red Bull in Turkey a couple of years ago. That was pretty smart. The Golf McLaren last year in Monaco.
Well, and this year they've had the Chrome McLaren
and the Chrome one. I don't mind a one-off livery. Then the Ferrari one's very subtle, isn't it? It's still the same
Ferrari colours.
Same colours, but with just a yellow tip on the nose. I quite like it.
Yeah, Alfa's the other team, Alfa Romeo, that has gone for a new livery with lots of gold highlights and the Italian flag on the engine cover to celebrate a new Alfa Romeo car, and of course their Italian roots are here at their home race. Rosanna.
Yeah, the pit lane just got really busy. Loads of cars pouring out onto the track with 16 minutes, 28 seconds to go. A final flurry, perhaps, and hopefully we'll see how hectic it could get later on during qualifying. Maybe this is certain teams trying to have a go at that toe, or perhaps just getting themselves prepared for what they may encounter later on.
So Rosso Corsa red
We had this debate earlier in the year, didn't we? Or was it this year or last year? Because where did I get Scarlet Red Ferrari from then?
The Scarlet Ferrari. Well, I think they did.
Did it used to be
I'm going to have to look into this.
What?
I think they did. They changed it, didn't they?
They went for a sort of
years
slightly
ago.
deeper red, didn't they? So and I presume that's the Rosso Corsa red.
And let's bring it full circle to the top of the show. You're strong on your Italian. What does Rosso Corsa mean?
Red.
That's good.
Corsa. Rosso Corsa. Red colour.
What's a green? A green
Car. A green...
what, like the Green Lotus of days gone by, or a green Jaguar? British Racing Green.
Iconic. A red icon.
Nah, it's
No?
Racing Red. Red.
Racing
Rosso
Red.
Corsa. Racing Red. British Racing Green. The Italian cars go for a Racing Red. There we go.
The Italian needs some work then on the old Duolingo.
Italian Racing Red.
The Italian Racing Red, the Rosso Corsa Red with a hint of yellow in it this weekend, and that's celebrating the Ferrari 24-hour Le Mans win earlier this year.
Enough of that. Soft tyre time. George Russell on a flying lap, 3/10 up on Max Verstappen through the first sector. Here he goes through the first chicane, second chicane even. Piastri's just bundled his way through the gravel, but that doesn't seem to be a problem for Russell. Nothing seems to be brought onto the circuit to disturb him. And that's pretty quick from Russell through the first sector, where Mercedes have been a little bit steady so far. So are they now unleashing a little bit more out of the engine? Hamilton does the first sector of the session so far. He's actually a 10.5 up on George Russell. So Lewis Hamilton going a fair bit quicker. Russell still up on Max Verstappen through the middle part of the lap. That's just Verstappen on a used soft, so that's not a huge benchmark. There's only a 10.5 up. But here we go to the final corner. Hamilton, half a second up through the middle sector, fastest of all again.
This is the sound of George Russell up through the gears, through the Curva de Alboreto and to the line. Personal best, Sector 1 and Sector 2 goes second fastest, less than half a tenth between himself and Verstappen. But what can Lewis Hamilton do as he comes across the line just behind Logan Sargent, who went well, but on the hard compounded tyre. Sargent in the Williams slots up into 11th. Here comes Hamilton, and he goes fastest, just shy of 2.5 tenths clear of Max Verstappen on the soft run as he slows down into turn 1.
And that is Hamilton's best lap of the weekend. It is not the best lap of the weekend. He's still slower than Sainz and Lando Norris from yesterday, but it's much improved from Hamilton, who's trimmed out the Mercedes car that he's driving, gone towards Russell's setup. It's exactly the same move as Verstappen has done in the other car, got towards the Perez setup, which is trimming out the downforce. Yesterday, Perez quicker in the straights, Verstappen in the corners, and they've aligned. So both Mercedes and Red Bull going in the same direction. And it seems to have helped Hamilton relatively to his teammate. It seems to have helped Verstappen as well relative to his teammate. And Verstappen is on an outlap, so we'll see what he can do to respond in just a moment.
The two Alfa Romeos out in sequence on track. I wondered if they might be trying a tow, but they're a little bit far away from each other, I think. Bottas comes into turn 1 ahead of Zhou Guanyu. The DRS slot on the rear wing slams shut under braking as he emerges out through the Rettifilo chicane and round the right-hander as the sun glistens down on that tweaked Alfa Romeo livery with the Italian flag adorned on the body of that Alfa. It's a personal best for Bottas, who's currently down in 19th on what has been a pretty difficult weekend so far for both Alfa Romeo cars, struggling to get out of their garages in yesterday's FP1 session. Zhou going quickly as well behind Bottas. Alex Albon is going for another one as well. He's stuck on the hard compound of tyres, so both Williams going for new hards to see how much pace they've got on those. So Sargent on a set of new hards went 11th fastest with a 1:22.5. Albon currently going quickly through the first sector. It's a personal best for him. It's a 27.1 and finding time as well in the middle sector as he comes into the final sector now. So let's see what Bottas and Zhou and Albon have, as they're currently the ones on their faster laps. Alonso also out there coming through the middle sector and winding up for a fast lap. Alonso currently down in 13th, but he's just stuck some new softs on, so we'll see what the Spaniard has got. First across the line, though, it is Albon on that hard compound of tyre, 6/10 off, but he does improve his time overall on that hard, 4th fastest for the tie. Here comes Alonso then on that new soft tyre. Stroll's also out there. Alonso then crosses the line with a 1:21.7 to go 4th. Stroll pops up into 7th. Now the fast times are coming. Magnussen up into 5th. Good lap from the Dane.
That Albon lap on the hard is actually pretty reasonable there.
Yeah.
According to yesterday's data, there could be about a second's difference between a hard and a soft. Even if it's a bit less than that, that'll put him right up there with Hamilton. But is Hamilton's benchmark about to be reduced? This is the sound of Max Verstappen down to the final corner. Fastest in the middle sector. Not as quick as Hamilton in the first. And we'll see really where Mercedes are at as he comes across the line here, exiting wide from the Parabolica, drives to the line, cuts towards the inside, and there we go, 4.5 tenths clear of Hamilton. So that is the pace of the Red Bull v the Mercedes in a relatively like-for-like trim, just under half a second.
Sargent pops up into 10th on the hards for his Williams. He's about 3.5 tenths off of his teammate Albon up in 6th, but the two Williams both in the top 10 as it currently stands. A lot of work going on down at Red Bull on Sergio Perez's car. Perez actually out of the car with 10 minutes to go as he watches on from the pit gantry, and they're clearly working hard on something on the right rear and actually the left rear and looking at the floor.
I don't think he's going out again. I think that's Perez done for the session. He's helmet off, and working on the floor is not a quick fix either. He's sort of 15-20 minutes for a floor change. We haven't seen. I don't think Perez has been off in this session, so whatever's happened is curtailed his running, and so he's not going to get a decent read into qualifying. Fortunately, he can try and learn something from his teammate who has punched in the fastest lap of the session. The first man to dip into the 1 minute 20s. 1 minute 20.998.
Slightly ominous, isn't it, from Max Verstappen, looking for a 12th win this season, but 10 consecutive that would be, and that would smash all the records. So Verstappen, in a record-breaking year, continues to show his unwavering pace.
But I want to see the Ferraris out there, and they are out there now on an outlap, so we'll see in a minute what they can do. Sainz was the fastest man yesterday, and his pace was only about 3 tenths down on what Max has done now. So can Ferrari find something on a new soft as well? And what about McLaren? Lando Norris still in the pits, currently 13th, hasn't done a competitive run yet today. They were the main competition for Verstappen yesterday. It wasn't Mercedes, and it certainly looks like it's not going to be a lot easier today for Mercedes than it was yesterday yet.
So Verstappen's completed his lap, and it's 4.5 tenths to him.
I don't know how to find that. Half a second.
Well-timed bit of radio that was. They're not having an easy time of it. It's a little bit more draggy, the Mercedes car, and on this circuit that gets found out. The straight line speed is not as strong as some of their rivals.
Is that why I've just kind of realised we've not spoken once about the Alpines? Gasly and Ocon have been quite anonymous so far, certainly in this session. Gasly's out there at the moment on the medium compound tyre. He's down in 19th, on the hard compound tyre I should say, and Ocon is still in the pits, and he was last out on the hard compound tyre as well, as we have an Alfa Romeo skirting through the gravel at Ascari.
That's Bottas off on his fast lap attempt, although that was on a hard tyre.
Yeah, leaves a plume of smoke for his teammate Zhou Guanyu to make his way through, but Bottas managed to rejoin. But yeah, nothing really stand out from the Alpines currently. Gasly's on a lap at the moment, but it's not lighting the world up. So we'll see what they've got. But I mean, there's a lot of talk recently about Alpine's power unit and how they're down on power compared to the other power unit manufacturers, and this is a wider conversation about how they're calling for engine equalisation. That hasn't been confirmed yet, whether that's going to happen by the FIA Commission or not. But Alpine's certainly pushing for it, whilst the other teams like Mercedes and Toto Wolff are not so keen on that.
Do you often find a lot to talk about Alpine?
Well, Gasly on the podium
in terms of one lap paces, yeah, very good, very good. But they've actually not made Q3 in the last 3 Grand Prix, which is surprising when you think Alpine, Ocon's had a podium this year, Gasly's had a podium in the last race, and a top 3 in the sprint in Belgium as well. So Okay, that's being a little bit facetious. They've had a lot going on behind the scenes, and of course there's plenty to talk about with the changing of the management, new owners this year. There are bits, but in terms of their on-track performance, they're actually struggling a little bit from where they were earlier in the year, and they've not developed the car particularly well. Race trim, Gasly was actually really, really solid last time out, but he did qualify 12th. Ocon was behind him and out in Q1, and they've not made Q3 since Silverstone, where Gasly crept into 10th place. And that's where they're at. Earlier in the year, they were a bit more competitive.
Yeah, well, so far, we'll see if they've got anything left in the tank for the two Alpines. But the Tifosi are on their feet and roaring because Carlos Sainz has just gone fastest with a 1:29.12 for the Spaniard in the Ferrari. Leclerc, though, just dipping a wheel onto the gravel. So now on another outlap, let's head down to Rosanna.
Yeah, is that a birthday Boxing Day? Do we call it that for Carlos Sainz? I don't know. Do you know what? I was just going to pick up on the Alpine situation. I was watching earlier on. There was a little bit of a problem underneath the car of Esteban Ocon. They were having a little look at all the fins that run underneath the car, obviously helping with the aerodynamics of the car. Mechanics were sort of having a little look, having a little wobble of the bits, but it all seemed okay, and the team told me everything was fine. But I don't think that accounts for their performance this morning. Meanwhile, I'm just standing outside Sergio Perez's garage, and Harry mentioned that Checo's out of the car. He's overalls down, baseball cap on, so he's not obviously going to take part in the session anymore. And I've just watched as the floor of his car has been taken off and taken away, and as soon as the floor was clear, about 10 mechanics jumped to the floor. They're all lying on the floor looking up at the underside of his car with torches. So there's obviously something very wrong with Sergio's car, and the work is ongoing as we speak. And as you can probably imagine, a lot of the guests of Red Bull who are lucky enough to be in the garage are peering on, watching these mechanics work incredibly fast. But the car is pretty much entirely stripped down, no front end on it at the moment, no floor. And I thought the mechanic was going to be removing the engine cover. Yes, he is. Yeah, he's removing the engine cover. So it's getting a full strip down. Hopefully they can find out what the problem is before qualifying later on.
They've got an early start with it, haven't they? It's going to deprive Perez of last couple of laps here, but they should be able to fix whatever it is. Even a full engine change they can do before qualifying. Not ideal preparation, though, for Perez. A birthday Boxing Day? You don't celebrate a birthday Boxing Day, Rosanna. Please.
Well, look, my birthday's next Sunday, and I'm expecting a full week to run into the celebrations, and I shall have a full week running out of the celebrations. So
does that mean you have a birthday eve as well?
Yeah, birthday fortnight, birthday eve. Just keep the presents coming, quite frankly.
You know, there are some people that celebrate their half birthday.
What?
When it's like 6 months.
Are you one of them?
To their, no, I find the idea of a birthday Boxing Day ridiculous, let alone celebrating it when it's exactly 6 months away. Rosanna probably is, so I don't want to say too much.
Yeah, exactly, March the 10th. What of it? No.
That's actually the day before my birthday.
Oh, there we go.
That's my birthday eve, Rosanna. We can't both do a celebration on that day. They clash.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I hope I'm going to be invited to yours. Are you?
I'm still finalising the list. I'll be in touch.
Oh my goodness, no, don't worry. I don't want or need anything in my life, so I'm happy the way I am. But yes, next Sunday, just put it in your diaries.
Just dreams for Rosanna, because they're free.
It's free to dream. Exactly.
For now, I smell a business opportunity.
Oh, dear me.
Thank you, Rosanna. I think, so Perez then, lots of work being done to that Red Bull. He's not going to get out for the rest of the session. There's just 2.5 minutes left of it.
So Leclerc is out there and improving, as is Liam Lawson. We'll keep an eye on Lawson through the final sector as Leclerc swings it into the Curva di Alboreto, the Parabolica to our seasoned folk. And here he comes across the line. Sainz currently top of the times. Leclerc jumps to 4th, half a second adrift, but it's not been a very clean run for Charles Leclerc. It's not actually been his best weekend this weekend so far.
No, Sainz has had the advantage so far just on pure lap time, certainly fastest yesterday in FP2, and has looked a bit more comfortable than Leclerc. So clearly that birthday Boxing Day pressure paying off for Carlos Sainz. Currently fastest, but Verstappen is out there once more on a set of softs, so we'll wait and see what he has got when he comes and finishes his outlap as Hülkenberg crosses the line to join his teammate. He's in 8th, Hülkenberg, Magnussen in 7th.
Ding dong for Lawson. Very decent lap from him on the medium tyre. He's gone up to 12th. like for like with Tsunoda, he is half a tenth quicker with 1:20 left on the clock. But this is the sound of Yuki Tsunoda going for a second lap on the medium tyre, which may be a qualifying tyre for this team, given the pace they've got at the moment, both outside of the bottom 5 places. So that'll be enough to get into to Q2, where they'd be switching to this medium tyre. That's why they're running it right at the death. And Tsunoda right now is behind Lawson at the end of the final practice. In he goes to the final corner, misses the apex by a slither. That'll tighten his exit. He'll have to wait to get on the power, and he improves. But Harry, he is 1,000th away from his rookie teammate.
Wow. Lawson then 12th, Tsunoda 13th, and that is like for like, both a second lap running on their medium compound of tyres for the AlphaTauri drivers.
That's good going from Lawson. Yeah. He's been solid. Last week it's very difficult to judge, apart from he didn't make any big mistakes and he kept it on the track, and his pace was fine, but it was difficult to judge. This week he's looked fairly solid, and this is a little bit eye-catching, seeing him ahead of Tsunoda, who might start feeling a little bit of pressure if this is a genuine bit of Lawson pace heading into qualifying. It would not look great. It would really take the wind out of his sails, Tsunoda, if Lawson came in and beat him. He's dispatched of De Vries. He
at a track where De Vries, though, performed rather well last year, getting into the points and out-qualifying his teammate Latifi.
Yep. But Tsunoda did a great job, surprisingly so for most people. I think thought De Vries would be a little bit more competitive than he was, but Yuki did a great job. And against Ricciardo, if Ricciardo came in and was quicker than Tsunoda, then you'd say the old Daniel Ricciardo's back and Tsunoda has a little bit of grace. But if Lawson comes in and is quicker than Tsunoda, that's a headache for him. It's only one session and it's only 1,000, so we'll see later on.
Ladies, Carlos, blind to one.
So that's Piastri on the radio, and very nearly, I think there was contact there between Piastri and Carlos Sainz coming into the first chicane. Here's what Sainz had to say about it.
Piastri on a cooldown or Piastri pushing? He was behind me and then he tries to overtake me. I don't know. He's like doing it on purpose, I think. See if I can get a penalty.
Understood.
So Sainz has the black and white flag, and he did turn in on Piastri, and they were so close to touching. I don't know if they did have a little bit of front wing to rear tyre action there at the first chicane, but we've had a few moments of sass on the team radio today, and in practice it doesn't make a huge difference. A couple of black and white flags gone out, but in qualifying, of course, there'll be grid penalties for that sort of thing.
Well, not long to wait then until qualifying. That is the checkered flag then on free practice 3, and the final practice session they get before we go up a gear for qualifying. And Carlos Sainz giving the home crowd at Tifosi something to shout about. Dare they dream for a pole for Ferrari? It might be a little bit far-fetched, but Sainz certainly ending this session fastest in front of Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc and Alonso, the top 5. Russell, Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Albon and Perez, with a lot of work to do in between now and qualifying on the floor for that Red Bull. Stroll 11th, Lawson, Tsunoda, Piastri, Sargent, the top 15, Bottas, Norris, Ocon, Zhou and Gasly, the 20 drivers in FP3.
Thank you very much, Harry and Jolien. Yes, Carlos Sainz leading the way in FP3, getting the Tifosi on their feet in the grandstands as they start to really fill up the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. And let me tell you, it is heating up here as well. Seemingly, we're going to have a pretty hot qualifying session later on this afternoon. A word on Sergio Perez, who was in the garage for quite some time and wasn't out at the end of FP3. They brought him in to investigate a small oil leak. So hopefully they can sort that out, patch it up, get it ready for qualifying later on, and he can get to grips with that car, which he was actually enjoying driving yesterday in FP2. So more to come from the Mexican driver. But guys, are we any clearer as to the picture up front? You know, Carlos Sainz leading 2 of the 3 practice sessions, and Verstappen, of course, there or thereabouts. But what of Mercedes as well? What does this mean for qualifying, do you think?
I think we're actually in a similar position to where we were yesterday, literally with Carlos Sainz topping the times, but Ferrari and Red Bull fairly evenly matched. Obviously Perez now will take a bit of a hit with this, so he might drop a little bit further out of contention for pole position potentially, having looked quite good yesterday. We didn't see anything of McLaren on the softs at the end, and they were quick yesterday in practice, so they're the wild card. I don't think Mercedes are in the hunt for pole. I think they're just a little bit too far adrift.
Okay, that's a bold prediction. Are you expecting more from McLaren as well, Harry? Because finishing their P14 and P17, that's really not what we all expected coming into this weekend.
No, not at all. I think there is more to come from McLaren. I mean, Piastri yesterday in FP2 got up to fourth in the end, and Norris was second fastest, and nothing between himself and Carlos Sainz. So I don't think we've seen McLaren's full hand just yet. But I think it's going to be tight qualifying. I think it is going to come down to traffic management, and if you can time it right, we could well see somebody pit Verstappen if he does get caught up in some traffic further around the lap. And Sainz and Ferrari continuing to show this pace that they've had since the start of the weekend.
Yes, and one would think that it would be Charles Leclerc up at the top, given his one-lap pace usually, Jolyon.
Yeah, overall a little bit quicker than Sainz on average, but not so far this weekend. Half a second down, scruffy session. He'll look to tidy that up.
Certainly quite a few drivers looking to tidy things up then as we head closer to qualifying this afternoon. We will be live at 5 to 3 on the BBC Sport website, so you can join us then. We'll talk you through that qualifying session, of course, the alternative tyre allocation, potentially causing a little bit of a headache for the teams and drivers this afternoon, and a little bit of traffic as well. Jolyon, Harry, thank you to you up in the commentary box. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.